Imagine living in a country where the main governing tool is fear. Imagine spies listening to your private conversations and keeping track of your every move. Imagine living your life in constant fear of what to say, where to go, and what to believe in. Growing up in oppressive Czechoslovakia during the age of communist rule, author Yan Bielek brings us a first-hand look at the life of the everyday person in his memoir, Just Don't Turn Around. At the young age of 3, Yan grasped what the word communism truly meant. This realization occurred the night his neighbor was taken from his home, never to be heard from again.
He mentioned to his drinking buddies in a pub, well, don't worry guys, communism is not going to be here forever. That all he did to be taken away and never being seen again. And that's how they governed the country, by fear.
Yan learned early on to live, as his father called it, a double-faced life.
We basically lived two lives. One was the inside life with our family, where we were Roman Catholics. We believed in God and we were raised like real human beings. The outside was the communist outside, where people couldn't believe in a God. They were prosecuted for any kind of deviation from what the government requested from them. And over the years, I just had to get used to it. It's difficult. It was very difficult, and because my mind was ever open and kind of searching and learning and inquisiting, and I kind of learned those robes, bells and whistles of that society, and I was actually much better off than my father. I was never scared.
That lack of fear resulted in Yan making his decision to leave Czechoslovakia for the United States. But there was a turning point that made this resolution definitive. Yan found a position as a chemical engineer with Imperial Chemical, a British company adding a branch to his hometown of Bratislava.
But then the Communist Party got involved again, and they forbade ICI to open the office in Bratislava. They opened it in a Czech part of Czechoslovakia, and the position was taken by another communist. At that point, I was basically done with the society, and I came back home. And I told my wife, honey, I know for years we've been discussing this, and you always told me that you didn't want to live under the bridge. But right now, the time is out. I'm going. You just have to decide if you're going with me or not.
Yan's wife Nora ended up saying yes, but with one condition: they must leave as a family.
My daughter was 6 and Peter 9 at that time. It was kind of really scary.
While Yan wasn't planning on leaving his children behind, there were many others he wouldn't be able to say goodbye to.
The most difficult part was not saying out loud, but inside saying goodbye to the family, because we basically left everybody behind. And nobody could know anything about our plan, because it was considered accessory to the crime, and the crime was leaving the country, which was against the law and punishable by 15 years in prison. I didn't want to subject anybody in a family to that kind of prosecution.
Yan and his family left in 1984, leaving behind everyone and everything they had worked for.
One day we locked up the apartment, and everything my wife and I worked for 9 years stayed there.
Once Yan and his family made it to an Austrian refugee camp, they saw their family grow together stronger than ever before.
All kinds of people left communism and went through the refugee camps in seek of a better and freer life. People who basically have their future with them or behind them were taken by countries like USA, Canada, and other European countries like Sweden, Germany, and so on. People who didn't have any kind of future, people without education, basically criminals, stayed in a refugee camp. So the good population moved out, and the bad one stayed there. It was very scary. The refugee camp brought our family really close together. We were never too far apart anyway, but in a refugee camp, we just grew together so good and so strong that we will never fall apart.
After 7 months, the Bielek family landed in New York. The organization that sponsored them set them up in a downstairs of a home in Boston.
My inside feeling was that I was finally home, because over the years, I kind of came to realization over in Czechoslovakia that I was an American born in the wrong place and stuck in the wrong place. So I worked many years to get here. Among them is learning the English language.
Despite having no money, family, or references, Jan's master's degree in plastic and fibers, along with his understanding of the English language, helped him to find a job in only 37 days.
It didn't take us too long to really get into society and really start growing into society, making our own income, cut off the dependency on U.S. government, and really just go up.
Now, over 20 years later, Yan penned his family's journey after attending the weddings of both his son and daughter.
And now we are at the wedding parties and everybody's like, oh, how did you come? What did you do? How did you leave the country? And I ended up telling the refugee story over and over and over again. And then my son's-in-law mother listened to the story, and then she yelled at me like, Yan, you better sit down and write that story into a book. So I finally, in a conclusion, I finally sat down and started writing the book, and in 14 months, this is what I produced.
You can obtain a copy of the self-published work Just Don't Turn Around at exlibris.com or order it in any bookstore. Yan also does presentations chronicling his journey from communism to freedom. You can contact him by email, also on the Ex Libris website. For Bridgewater This Week, I'm Alicia Fortin.